Welcome to the Scale Forward podcast. Today, we're diving into the future of remote work and virtual offices. I'm thrilled to have Zach, the founder of Grapevine, a company that's redefining how remote and hybrid teams collaborate. Welcome, Zach.
Thanks for having me, Russell. I'm excited to be here.
We briefly had a chat before, and I know this is going to probably be an exciting one. And as I said, feel free to go off on tangents or just rip a new one if you really want.
I will. I'm in that zone today, so I'm ready.
Love it. Okay. So you're the founder of Grapevine Software. For those aren't familiar, can you just go through sort of the origin story? What gap in the market did you see that led you down this endeavor?
Yeah, so there's two things that I like to talk about whenever it comes to the start of Grapevine, and it's probably what you think. So the pandemic is involved, but at first we had this SaaS approach, right? So I look at SaaS as this decentralization of a lot of software. So you're able to specifically solve one department's problem or one specific use case problem. And that's good for people that are in the office and they're connected and they don't necessarily need to have a centralized platform to understand everything that's going on in the organization. So that was good. But then the pandemic happened in 2020. And what I say here is that we went remote because we had to, right? And that started causing or bringing awareness to this pain point, which is we do have these departmental softwares or these use case softwares, but that actually creates a problem where you have departmental silos, you have scattered information. So whenever you're just trying to find something in your organization or know who someone is, you have to go to this tool. If it's not there, then you have to go to this tool. If it's not there, then you have to go to this tool. And Slack is a great tool for communications. It's shit for finding information. And that's just the truth. That's what we hear often. And so what I was looking at as I was working in 2020 and 2021, I got brought on to a company called Kumu as the strategy staff executive. And then I also kind of transitioned into director of sales ops and managing sales engineers. And that made me take on a lot of different hats. And so I had a lot of different information that I needed to organize, to find, to share. And I just realized that there was this big gap where the sales team didn't know what marketing was doing. HR was over here in their own HRIS tool. And as much as HR people want to say that like the HRIS tool is great, nobody's living there. Like that's just the truth, you know? And so like I saw these two worlds colliding that were never supposed to collide, right? And I started realizing it. And at Kumu, I did build something called Buzz from the Cloud. And it was basically like this updated thing, almost like an intranet with our own tool, but it wasn't interactive. It was always delayed and all that kind of stuff. And so I looked around and I spoke to a lot of people. We did a lot of product validation conversations. And the real thing that's missing is that home or that virtual HQ or the centralized platform, whatever name you want to use. And basically, that's where Grapevine came to in existence because there were just so many places that people could try to find things and never find them or take hours and hours and hours to find them. And then on the remote side, we also add this element of human to it. And so we're not just like a knowledge management system. We also have employee profiles. We have ways to connect with your colleagues and actually bring the person to the remote working world.
Nice. Yeah, I can clearly see where this is the fit because not just me, we've all had this issue. It's like go talk to like I don't know where they are, who they are, what's it, how to get to them. Interesting. So to launch the thing, you validated it by talking to a lot of people. Can you walk me through that? What were the early days getting this from literally an idea to off the ground to where you're at today?
Yeah. So I know a lot of people out there will say like build your MVP in 3 months and all that kind of stuff, but it also depends on what type of product you're building. And so the thing that we realize is that we are solving multiple problems, but if we had to choose an overarching theme, we're solving the challenges that distributed teams experience. And that's scattered information, it's isolated employees, and it's fragmented tools. And so as we were coming to this idea and making it a reality, I just started getting on LinkedIn. I started connecting with people from my previous position and just started talking to them about the idea without any like UI, UX design or anything like that. And then I got convinced enough that, okay, this is a real problem and it can be solved. And it doesn't have to be too technical to solve. You know, we want to keep it stupid simple. We want people to be able to just like have this cool tool that they can use to centralize information and connect people without any issues. So to go back to the original question, I would send out, I actually did this. So I used Apollo.io and I recorded, it was either a Loom or a Vidyard video. And I was just very straightforward. I said, hey, I'm Zach Wright. You don't know me. This isn't AI. I'm a real person. And we're thinking about building this product and I'd love your insight. And so we probably got about 20 people to speak to in combination of cold outreach through that approach. And we did the video in such a personalized way that it, like, if I sent it to you, you wouldn't know that I didn't just record it for you.
Yep.
Like, you know, and so I think that's what really resonated. We even had somebody respond back to us and said, great approach. I really love this. Yes, I'll talk to you. And at first we were speaking to HR people, and then we were speaking to founders and trying to figure out like our ICP. And I'd still say like, we're still trying to figure that out. You know, we don't have product market fit fully. Anybody who says that they do as a startup, they're probably lying. And so, yeah, like we just used Apollo. We used the people that we knew. And then we started developing through those conversations, we started developing the UI UX and the conceptualization for the visuals, so we could start showing the people what this would look like, how it would function. And then as we had those designs built, they were giving us feedback like, have you thought about this? Or that's really good. I know that this problem is what we have in our organization, so it'd be cool if you could do that. And then we always analyze that feedback and we match it with our vision, right? Because I think a lot of product companies out there, they'll hear something and they'll be like, oh, we got to do that or nobody's going to buy our product. But it's like, we were talking about Steve Jobs earlier, and he's like, the customers don't necessarily know what they want. They know the problem that they have. They don't know how to solve it, or they wouldn't have the problem. And so you kind of have to bridge that gap between what is it that they're saying and then what is it that we're trying to do, and find that happy balance.
Totally agree. I'm actually going through this now with a partnership that I'm in, and we're outreaching we're emailing our customers like, we know you're using our product, that's cool, but we also know there's gaps that we could fill. But tell us what problems you're having, and we're finding it just a lot of things that we already thought about that, but we're hearing it in a different way, and we're like, oh, we could add this or we could do that. So I think that's totally smart on your end, obviously, to get that feedback. Zach, how important do you think it was to get the feedback, take it on, and then just go and do the thing, test it, not be afraid to fail? Like, how important is it as a founder to have speed, wheels on the ground, just go, go, go?
Yeah, I kind of did a post on this on LinkedIn recently, and it was basically saying like, being a founder isn't a skill, it's a mindset. And I think that is the biggest thing that people don't talk about, because there's this mixture of, you are getting this feedback and there's awareness of the problem, but then there's this unknown of, is your problem going to solve it in the way that they want to solve it? And is it going to solve it in a way that they want to pay to solve it? Right? A lot of people will talk about competitors and stuff, and I could list a laundry list of competitors that we have out there, but the real competitor that we have is people just using Slack instead of like really investing in this identity for your remote or distributed team. You know, like if you use Slack, it just looks like Slack and you don't have an identity inside of it. But then there's also the other stuff like pen and paper. Like a lot of people don't think that that's a competitor, but if we're talking about what we're doing, like, yeah, it could be done on pen and paper. It could be done on Zoom. But in this new way of working, that's not necessarily how things happen. And what I mean is like, Zoom is synchronous, right? So you and I are meeting at the same time. We have to be here. You're in Australia. I'm in North Carolina. Those times don't necessarily add up together. especially if you're working consistently. So you need that asynchronization approach. And so I don't know if that answers the question. I kind of went on a tangent, but
you did, and that's cool. But it does lead to another question. Actually, there's a couple. It was so let's say you've justified the idea. You've spoken to some other founders, some other people. You've got wheels on the ground. You're building the product. First question is, how did you get your first customers? And then once you've answered that one, can you break down what it looks like as a customer journey with the onboarding and then actually using the service?
Yeah. So the very first customer actually, so I'm a non-technical founder, so I don't necessarily code myself. I can read a little bit, but I'm not that person. And so we hired a software development firm. Now, obviously I'm driving the vision of the product and we're making sure, but I like to get their input, their ideas. I mean, this company has worked with Sony. It's worked with pretty large scale companies out there. And so whenever we got the product to an MVP state, and we kind of break it up into MVP number 1, number 2, number 3. But whenever we got it to MVP number 1, they were actually our first customers.
Okay.
And I think that's a testament to like them believing in the product and actually solving a real problem. But then the second customer, it was actually through content marketing, and because we're pretty heavy on LinkedIn. So every single day we try to add value to our customers. So we'll talk about the problem through blog posts. We have a weekly series called the Future of Work Weekly Report, where we analyze what's going on in the future of work and we put it out there so people can stay ahead of the game. And so I think that they found us through either one of those videos or a LinkedIn, and then they went to our website and signed up for a free 30-day trial. And then to tap into that, the way that the onboarding works, or the entire process really, is a mixture of a few things. So we have content marketing, like I mentioned before. So we're constantly putting that out there. We have a newsletter because we've been building in public since we started. And so we have a newsletter that's actually public. And some people would say, like, don't do that because you don't get their emails and you don't do all that kind of stuff. Ours is on LinkedIn. But honestly, I wanted to tap into the people and give them an easy way to follow us. So it was more about awareness rather than driving those leads necessarily. But every single Sunday, we put out something called the weekly recap. We put in all the posts that we did over the past week. We do something called the product progress report. And so every single week we talk about, like, what did we develop? Like, where are we in our state of work and all that kind of stuff. So people have been able to follow our journey through that. And then the other parts are cold outreach through a mixture of leveraging Apollo, like I mentioned, DMing or in-mailing in LinkedIn, and actually a podcast too. We have an Untangled Vines Redefining the Rules of Work podcast. And so we'll invite people on who are remote or distributed founders or CEOs, and we'll talk with them and then try to turn them into either a partner or a customer over time. So that's kind of like the way that we bring people in. And then once they get in, it's kind of like your typical thing. So you have a discovery call. You try to figure out, like, are they actually a right fit? Are they ready to move forward with Grapevine? And then if they are, then we continue to the demo phase. And then we start talking about pricing. Then we close it. And then after that, we have something called the OIC toolkit, Onboarding, Implementation, and Change Management Toolkit. It's on our website under help and support, and you can go check it out. You can either self-serve yourself, or we'll leverage that entire guide to walk your entire team through the onboarding training and setup of Grapevine for your specific company. And then we'll just have continuous conversations with our customers. So it's kind of that typical marketing to sales to customer success to either upsell or just building that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical to hear that. And I do believe I'm seeing a shift from demo calls to a lot of the self-serve stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to like, how much of your market do you think would be Gen Z?
It's tough. It's tough because I think our market is technically millennials in the sense of the buyer, right?
Yeah.
The buyer is most likely going to be millennial, but the user is going to be
Probably
millennial and Gen Z. Yeah. And our platform is very social oriented. So my founding advisor, he always likes to say, it's like if SharePoint and Facebook had a baby, that's basically what we have. So It's this very easy to adopt, easy to use, and create clarity and alignment for your team. And so, yeah, I think it would be a mixture of those. And then really, because I had this conversation with Dave Cairns on our podcast, and he brought up something that was important, that it's not necessarily generational that is as important as being digitally native. Because if you're remote or distributed as a team or an employee, you need to be somewhat digitally native. So you need to know how to do certain things.
Yeah.
But we've tried to make it as easy as possible, because I think too many technical people build technical problems for regular people, or technical software for regular people.
Which then brings friction to the whole onboarding, and they're going to bounce.
Exactly. And I mean, for example, like a lot of people talk about Airtable, even Notion to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It's like more that these companies get mature, the more complex they get, and the tougher it is to actually just self-serve yourself, or even just start it. Like, and so like with Grapevine, maybe you can try it after, but like, I really think that if you sign up to Grapevine and you get in and you poke around for like 30 minutes or so, you know how to do everything in Grapevine.
Back to my point on the Gen Z stuff is interesting, because you mentioned that the self-serve. I really do think, and I tell this to everybody, I think that's 2025 is going to be all about that. We're going to see charging for seats potentially go, but also Gen Z is very much, don't talk to me, don't just let me figure out who you are and if I like it or not, and then I'll be a loyal customer for life. I'm wondering, you're doing LinkedIn and you're doing obviously all the normal stuff. You didn't mention Twitter. Are you doing Twitter and no YouTube? Are you on there?
We are doing YouTube. So that's where the weekly series is. We have a lot of feature highlights that we put out there, because like, we're not one of those people that are trying to hide the product. I think that that's stupid. I know I shouldn't use those words, but like, I think that like, talking of self-serve, how do you know if a product is right for you or not if you can't actually see it? So basically what you're doing as a company is saying, you have to sign in to see my product so you can figure out that it's not working for you. What you did is you wasted their time. You had vanity metrics saying that you had this amount of sign up, and then they don't convert and they churn before the free trial is even over, right? And so like, we want people to be able to see our product and to decide before they even get inside of, or to talk to us, like they know, okay, this is how I'm going to use Grapevine. I don't even need to really speak to somebody, going back to your point. We still don't, like, I can't lie, we still have tons of improvements to do. We're a startup. We have that, like, I mean, I won't call our product embarrassing, but like the Reid Hoffman, if your first product isn't embarrassing and you shipped it too late. And I would say like, we still have areas of improvement, like tons of improvements. And that's what this year is going to be about. We're calling it the enhancements phase or improvements phase of our product. But to go back, like, we're not on X. I've just never been a huge Twitter user other than like 2008.
I should call it X, not bloody Twitter.
Well, that's okay. I don't really care. But like, to us, that's just not where our customer lives. And so that's why we really honed in on LinkedIn and YouTube. I think one of the things that we are thinking about expanding to is Blue Sky, because it's a pretty cool alternative to X or Twitter, and it's better than Threads. And so Zuckerberg's kind of falling off the deep end too. But so like, we wanted to hone in and try to win one channel instead of being so distracted by other things. And so that's why we specifically chose LinkedIn, and then YouTube actually serves as a content creation that can be fed into LinkedIn. So it's really not like YouTube is another channel. It's like we're creating content that can then also be shared on LinkedIn. And I mean, honestly, like I'm working with somebody on LinkedIn right now, and we're really tapping into my voice as a thought leader, because a lot of people talk about RTOs or return to office mandates. We hear from Amazon. I think JP Morgan just announced, AT&T, you name it. There's a lot of like big time players that are forcing people back into the office. They're not going well. People are quitting, all that kind of stuff. And then I actually came up with another acronym called RTROW. So RTROW, which is redefining the rules of work. It's kind of tapping into our brand. And so a lot of people will look at Grapevine and the things that we talk about as we hate the office. We don't hate the office. We think that flexibility should be the option for every employee because we see the data on top of it, right? And so we know that like flexible organizations or hybrid organizations are more productive than those of 100% in the office and 100% remote. Now, I'm a big fan of 100% remote as well. So, you know, you got to balance the line there, but
yeah,
exactly. And so like, but that's the thing, right? Like you and I could love remote work and we never really need to go into the office, but that doesn't mean that Joe Schmo over here feeds off of the energy in the office, right? And I do think that it is important to have a structured hybrid approach, just because Nick Bloom talks about this, Stanford professor and researcher of remote and hybrid work for, I think, like 20 plus years. He's a big name out there. He talks about this of structured hybrid being important because if you go to the office, especially if you make people go to the office a certain amount of time, and then they go there and they're just sitting on Zoom calls and they're not interacting with anyone, they're going to hate it, right? And so if you have this structured approach where it's like Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we're going to go into the office, you know that for your schedule, you schedule the things that you need to do in person. But even if you're a global company or spread across the states or whatever the case is, you can still have this structured approach. You just want to make sure that if you are making people go into the office, there's a purpose behind it. And when you're in the office, there's a reason for them being there. If not, let them work from wherever they want to.
Can you let me know how many months in you answered this thing and what's some of the biggest hurdles and challenges that you faced and how you overcame them?
Yeah, so I think I might have a little bit of a unique perspective being non-technical and leveraging a development firm. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But technically, we started in March 2023, where we started creating the UI UX design and creating the conceptualization of the idea to a reality. And so we didn't start coding until June or July of 2023, sorry. And then from there, we didn't actually launch the name of the company until around August or September of that same year. And then from there, we did a beta program. And then from there, June 10th of last year, 2024, is when we officially launched to the public, where anybody can come to the website, sign up, start using it, or talk to us and then get the product in your hands. And so that's kind of the journey that we did. The failures, and it's always hard for me to describe a failure because each failure that I have that we have as a company, we always try to learn from it. So for example, one of the issues at the very beginning was the miscommunication, which is ironic because we're building a communication platform, among other things inside of it. But there was a miscommunication of what needed to happen in the UI UX design and how that translates into the development. And so what I mean by that is at the early stages, very early stages, because we're still early stage, we realized that the UI UX design was missing a decent amount of stuff. And so what I envisioned as our MVP in our first SOW was completely different than what the team, the development firm, visualized. And it was because the UI UX wasn't fully developed, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we did from there, because it cost a lot of money to fix that problem, what we did from there was we did a pretty much like a retrospective. And we were looking at, okay, why did this happen? And what can we do to make sure that it doesn't happen in the future? So now each time that we think about bringing in a new feature or extending an SOW, statement of work, if people don't know, we fully brainstorm. Like me and our project manager, we have a really great relationship. We've learned how each other communicates. We learn like what motivates each other, and we learn like this types of questions to have, so we don't go down that same road. So as we're starting to develop a new feature, we're thinking, okay, this is the workflow that needs to happen. This is how the person is going to use it. Are we missing anything? And we'll think about, like, right now we're building something called Grapevine Spaces, and you kind of think about it like a SharePoint meets Notion approach in a sense. And in there, we're thinking about, okay, what is the internal flow? What is the external flow? Like whenever we share this page, what does the external page look like? Does somebody need to sign in? Do they not need to sign in? They don't have to sign in, just FYI. So it's good for customers and partners. So that's a failure. And a personal failure within the business is sometimes how I react quickly and I would say aggressively, where if something happens in the business and I can overreact in a certain sense. And what I have to realize is that, okay, these things are going to happen. That's where it goes, like the founder is not a skill, it's a mindset. So how can I not overreact, but understand the situation? One of our core values is don't criticize what you can't understand, AKA seek to understand. Shout out Bob Dylan. That's a lyric from him. But so I have to correct myself sometimes on our own core value. And that's why it's so important. So really it's like, how can I take feedback? And this happened yesterday, but I didn't get aggressive, so I'm learning. But I had a great conversation with my founding advisor, and this kind of taps into another quote unquote failure, but it's more of like a rethinking. And so my founder is telling me a lot of things that I don't want to hear, which is good. As a founder, like get somebody out there that tells you like it is, because the things that you don't need to hear or that you don't want to hear are probably the things that you need to hear the most. And so, for example, in our platform, if you look at it right now, on the top toolbar, we have something called human resources, and we're not an HR tech company. And he brought up this sentiment or this thought-provoking idea. He said, that's probably why HR people are getting brought into the conversation and slowing down the process. Because HR, and I love HR, I'm going to say this. So I love HR, but HR has a lot of opinions and they don't have budget. And so they can slow down the process. And so his idea is like, let's just remove the HR page and stop having that conversation. So I would say that it's a lesson learned more than a failure, but some people could look at it as a failure because we spent a lot of time building the HR portal hub. And then there's a couple of other things that we're thinking about removing from the platform to have a more direct conversation. Because since we are solving so many problems, it can get convoluted on one specific thing that doesn't even really have to do with what we're trying to solve. So I would say those are probably like 2 or 3 failures that some people would call failures. I call them lessons learned.
Lessons, aren't they? Yeah. I think what stood out to me there is you've heard the saying, you got to surround yourself with the right people, and the ones that will tell you what you don't want to hear when you need to hear it. One of the values we have in this household, shout out to my partner, is she has a rule: no criticizing, no condemning. Not allowed to do that in this household. Sometimes I don't realize this. You broke the rule. Money in the tip jar. So surrounding yourself with the right people, or even if you can, I mean, you're fortunate enough to have these people around you to advise you. Where could a young tech founder go to get this advice, do you think?
Yeah, so actually my founding advisor has a startup community called Dana Startup Lab, and it's free. It's for B2B SaaS founders. And so if they are building a B2B SaaS platform, I would say go there. There's also, YouTube is a huge thing. And books, like if you're watching this visually, like I have tons of books behind me. They're not for looks. I've read all of them. And to me, before I had mentors, those were my mentors. And so I do think that like people will make excuses if you let them. And the only person that can help you stop making those excuses is yourself. And so like you could say, okay, well, I grew up in this area. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, or a little bit outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I could say, I didn't grow up with any tech background. I didn't grow up with anybody who started their own tech company, so I can't do it. But honestly, like those are excuses that allow you to be less than. And no offense to anybody out there, but like if you want to be a founder, you can't be less than. You have to be unique. You have to be willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do, or you're going to live that same life. Again, no offense to everybody. Everybody has their own definition of success. But that's how I see it. And I even see this around my friends, right? Like they don't have the same ambition as I do. They don't have the same drive in this area. Like they might put it on their kids and all that kind of stuff, which is good. You want to help your kids out and all that kind of stuff. But like, to me, this is my quote unquote legacy. I want to be able to build Grapevine where it actually redefines the rules of work. Like that's the whole thing. Because, and just to like tell people, like redefine the rules of work, it means like 9 to 5. That's not how we work anymore. Measuring productivity based off of butts and seats or hours in the office. That's not how we work anymore. It's instead of micromanagement, it's trust and autonomy. Instead of performance based off of butts and seats, it's based off of outcomes. And then it's actually giving a fuck about the people that you manage and lead. And like, to me, that is what we're missing in the organization, right? And so to me, like flexible and hybrid and remote work is a way that we're able to shift the conversation where this new way of working actually gets implemented. Because I think being in the office, managers were able to just get by for the longest time. And that means that employees didn't have clarity. They didn't have a growth plan. They didn't have these things that actually benefited them. And that's really what it is that the office creates this imbalance of power where remote, flexible, hybrid creates this more flat organization. And I think that's why a lot of leaders want to go back into the office. I think I just wrote a post on this too, but it was like the main reason that people want to, like leaders want to go back into the office is because they want people to kiss the ring. You know, they want that power. They want that corner office. So
that's bad. It reminds me, I had a conversation with a great man called Sue, and he said the notion of excellence is lost on a lot of people. Something he said in there, bums on seats.
I went on a big tangent.
Yeah, but like bums on seats, it just and I used to work in corporate. I was like, oh man, you're taking me back. I was so mediocre back then. You guys just just going to work, kissing the ass of the sales manager. Good job. Everyone clap when shot like monkeys, man. And like, we lost the passion to seek excellence. And then, funny enough, when I started to work remote, you get that back a bit because the founder's like, I don't care when you're in the office really, or when you sign in, just get this done. That's the most important shit. Live your life for us. As long as we're getting stuff done, you're getting your done. Our business is growing. Happy days. So,
you know, I wanted to say something there because like you said that in the office, you were mediocre. And if you really think about it, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason that you had to be mediocre was because the leader was probably threatened by anything that was outside of the box, right? So if you had a good idea,
maybe, and maybe I just wasn't aware of it because I was definitely gunning for the sales manager role, right? Like,
well, exactly, right. And so you would have to take that sales manager's job if you had it, right? And so they want you to do good, but not good enough.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's a topic, but. Yeah. Zach, if you could just tell us sort of where you're at with your marketing team today and sort of what you plan, what 2025 have in store to really blow this thing out of the water.
Let me ask you something. What do you think our marketing team looks like? It's a litmus test for me.
I'd want to say there's probably one person who's pretty competent that's covering all bases.
Yeah. I was hoping you would say multiple people, but
but I'm in the game.
No, that's true. So right now, and this is where I think actually being non-technical is a benefit for our company, where my main focus is on the business, finance, operations, sales, and marketing, right? And so everything that you see out there, a blog post, a YouTube video, marketing video, post on LinkedIn for our company page or my page, it's all me right now. And so the way that we hope to continue to grow, because we don't run ads right now, we've thought about it, but I think it's a little bit premature because, like I mentioned before, we don't necessarily have product market fit. We're working towards product market fit, and each person that we bring on, we get a little bit closer. But I do think organizations, they go a little bit too quick, and they get like 2 customers in the same industry, maybe the same title, and then they're like, product market fit. We got it. Let's go. And so like the reason I bring this up is like, I don't think ads is the right thing for us at the moment. I think once we get a little bit more clarity on our ICP, we get a little bit more clarity on what product market fit kind of looks like are we heading in that direction? Then we can test it with some ads. But the actual way that we're growing right now is, as I mentioned, like content marketing is a big thing. So we're continuing to produce content, get it out there. And it's not just content about Grapevine. It's content about the problem. It's content about redefining the rules of work. We're trying to give value to people where they actually want to know what is behind that company that I keep learning from, so we're kind of taking that approach.
Will doing that help? Do you think by doing that, it'll help you identify your ICP further?
I think so, because if we continue to talk about the problem, but then we also continue to talk to people on the back end, like our current customers, our prospects that we're speaking to, like, why did you not choose to move forward with us? Why are you kind of putting a halt on the process? Or like, what in our platform did you see that was really good, but it wasn't good enough to move forward, or something like that, right? So it's this combination of, you got to continue to speak to the people that you're speaking to, and not just about selling the platform, but about learning to be able to create that real ICP, that real product market fit. But to answer the original question, we are seeing organic growth through our blog post, through the YouTube channel, through like all these different things that leads into people going to Grapevine and visiting. And then things like this podcast and all that kind of stuff. So I do think that it will help. It is more of a long-term play. Yeah. Like content marketing is a long-term play. So we're also doing things this year that I would say we weren't able to last year, which is we're hosting our first ever virtual event. And surprise, it's called Redefining the Rules of Work event. We're very stuck on that, but maybe I'll send you the link and maybe you can put it in the show notes. And that's going to be happening February 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'll send you that link, but we're doing that. And we're really telling people the Grapevine journey, where we were at the beginning of 2024, where we ended at 2024. And then we're announcing two big features, which is our information hub and Grapevine Spaces. And so those are two things where you can have documented file management, and then you can also actually create and collaborate within our own system. And so now one of the things I like to say is like, we are bringing communication and information into one system. Like they should live together. And I don't know why it has taken so long, but then the other thing is in April 28th through the 30th, we're going to Austin, Texas for the Running Remote conference. And we're going to be in the Startup Alley. So we have like a little booth there. And so we're going to see how that works. We think that it's perfect for our ICP that we assume is the right one right now, which is remote founders with teams that are anywhere from, we even have people that are using the platform that are 2 people. And so, but anyway, typically it's like 10 to 250 people and they're specifically going to that event. So that's how we're hopefully going to continue on the marketing side. As product, we're going to continue to develop the product. As I mentioned, we're going to do the improvements phase. So all the things that are in there are only going to get better this year.
Okay. I think those events will do really well. Are you specifically not running ads just only because you're not you don't think you're there yet, or is it a strategic decision for budgeting aspects as well?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. We're 100% bootstrap until we get to a certain point where we can start going to investors, and because we want to continue to have the leverage. One of the things that as a founder, I want to make sure that I continue to have, especially at this early stage, is the decision-making process, not as like an authoritarian, but as the person who has the vision, understands the problem, and wants to see it through, where we can actually, cares the most. Yeah. And so like, once you bring investors, it's all about dollars and change, And so like obviously we want to continue revenue. We do want to grow faster, as I'm sure every startup does. But at the same time, all these learning lessons are creating a better product for our users and future users. So, but to answer the original question, I think it's a mixture of both, where the budget, we have to be very specific and understand where every dollar is going. And then it's also, we're still playing around with the messaging that connects the most with who we think our ICP is. And if we ran ads right now, I think it could be wasting money, and we might not even know what to really test, to get the actual answer that we want.
I'll ask a couple more questions, but that one's an interesting one. You said like the messaging is, you think is not quite right. As a founder, perhaps who's brand new to the game, how can we get something that's more quantitative? How do we know when the messaging is right? What's a metric that we can look at? Or are we just thinking, are we just guessing? And should we just keep testing? Because Zach, you might think your messaging is right, but Russell in marketing is saying, well, perhaps it could still be better. So what do you think is the point where you'll identify, oh, that's the right message?
I think it's, I hate to say this, but at the beginning, it's kind of a vibe, right? Because you're talking to these people and you're delivering the message that you worked on, and you're getting their feedback. And so hopefully you're talking to the right people, and then from their feedback, you're able to tweak the messaging a little bit so you can use their words so it relates to other people. So that's more of the vibe. The actual metric, if you're a platform like ours, we have a free 30-day trial on our website. And so if we see that we change the messaging and then the signups go up, then we know that something's going in the right direction. So that's like the quantitative metrics. And then there's that qualitative metrics. And I think if you can blend those somehow.
And you know that for sure because you're not changing anything else along the way.
Right. Yeah. So like if we change the messaging, like we just changed the messaging on the website recently, it's like break silos, reimagine work, the human first virtual office or virtual HQ. And so now we're trying to see, does that resonate? Another way that we're tracking that beyond signups is the traffic that we're generating to the website itself. And the way that we do that is, one, we have that organic and direct traffic that people can find, whether they're like searching on Google or whatever the case. And then that content marketing, that messaging shifts a little bit too, as it relates to what we just improved the messaging to be. So like whenever we talk about Grapevine on our LinkedIn profile or our LinkedIn company page now, it matches what the company website says. So I guess those are two things that are shifting, but they're the same kind of messaging that we're testing.
Fair enough. All right, Zach, before we wrap it up, bit of a funny question, but if I was to ask you right now, what's keeping you up at night about Grapevine, what would you say?
Well, last night it was the conversation I had with my founding advisor because of those specific call outs. And I think it's a mixture of the messaging getting in front of the right people and having people, or having more signups, having more people use the product so we can continue to develop. Because since we are 100% remote, we are that too, 100% bootstrapped, we need those new customers to continue to extend our run rate. And so I would say it's a mixture of those things. Like, is the product right? Not perfect, but is it right for the moment? Is the messaging connecting with the people that we want to reach? And is the run rate good? So I think it's those three things. And right now, all of it is good, but you're always concerned about it as a founder.
Well, thank you, Zach. I appreciate you jumping on and sharing your insights about Grapevine. Did you want to just let people know where they can learn more about Grapevine, how they can connect with you, and about those shows that you have coming up?
Yeah, so if you go to grapevinesoftware.io, you'll find our website there. You can find me on LinkedIn, Zachary Wright, MBA. I am one of those people. And then we have Grapevine, your virtual office platform, on LinkedIn. That's how it's labeled there. Subscribe to the weekly recap so you can get all the good updates every single week. We have a Grapevine YouTube channel as well. And then the Redefining the Rules of Work. If you go to any of those platforms, you'll be able to find it there, especially on LinkedIn and YouTube.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Zach, again for jumping on. I'll put all the links in the show notes and description as well. But yeah, thanks again for jumping on.
you. It was a great conversation. I liked it.